Hey, good morning, boys. Duskwarden here, coming back with another class deep dive. Today we're going for Cox, or Knight of Xoroth. So we're going to talk a little bit about all three specs. Luckily, again, this is a class I have a little bit more of experience in. Not quite as much as Templar, but I've done my fair share of pretty high content with it in the alpha, and I've played it enough in the beta to feel confident about the changes that happen. So, what is Knight of Xoroth? Basically, the concept is it's kind of a warrior, warlock, paladin hybrid type of conceptual class. You have access to three resources. Well, you have two real resources. So your main resource is Rage, which is built using Sever, which is Demon Strike for old players, and a few other abilities that we're going to talk about later. You can use the Rage to use a spender, such as Infernal Strike, which just does damage, generates Demon Fire. Demon Fire is just combo points. It's combo points. It stacks to 6 stacks, and every combo point affects your spells differently. For example, Skull Taker, which would be your main single target melee spender, or your like the Eviscerate equivalent, deals 20% increased damage per Demon Fire consumed. So this kind of logic is just prevalent across the old class. You get different ways to build Rage, or spend Rage and gain Demon Fire, or spend Demon Fire. You have three specs. The first spec here would be Hellfire, the one I'm currently playing. Hellfire is a battle mage hybrid, so you're specializing in spell attacks using fire and an imp pet, and you deal kind of like a ret does, like being like a plate strength hybrid. You're using fire attacks at range, and you have access to things like Seeking Flame, which is a cooldown based range attack, a dot, and your AoE is a Fan of Flames. The second spec would be War. War is much closer to a warrior archetype, where you're very physical. Every attack is big and meaty, and kind of reminds you of like Mortal Strike type of warrior gameplay, like Arms Warrior. You have access to like an AoE spender in the form of Warbringer that replaces your Fan of Flames. Deals really big chunky hits of damage, so it's super fun. And then you have Defiance, which is the tank. Basically, it's a pet tank where you're a shield tank, and you summon imps around you. You can get from anywhere from like 4 to like 10 imps around you, and you use them. You kind of like they do damage and transfer their aggro to you, and then you can like sacrifice them to regain your own HP and do some other cool things. Staples of Cox across the entire class would be the use of Pestilences, which would be kind of like a stance that you can use and unleash with Hellscream. That ability lets you use a secondary effect. So one of the main ones is going to be Pestilence of Famine, which makes it so every Demon Fire you spend heals you for 1% of your HP. And then the Unleash is a big AoE leech that gives you a ton of HP. Scales super well early. At the end game, it's still like a good AoE heal. In single target, it starts becoming as useful, but it's still pretty good. Another thing that's pretty neat is the mount. So the Xorothian Warsteed. You get your own unique class mount, which is the pretty cool looking fire horse here, which has access to unique mechanics like special spells that you can use while you're mounted, such as a charge, a stomp on the ground that deals AoE damage, a jump, and you can mount in combat with certain talents. So that definitely has some very unique flavor. You have access to Flesh Hook, which is a grip or a dead grip type of mechanic. So it's very strong for positioning and such. And that's kind of the core. Like that's kind of like the core team of the entire class. Now, if you want to go for the tree in general, right? To the left here, we have access to Chain Whip. On a 20-second cooldown, we have a mid-range interrupt. So this is extremely powerful. It also does damage. So it's not even like small damage. It's actually like not a waste of a global at all. So it feels pretty good to use. You have access to Suffuse. Suffuse is a Demon Fire spender that restores some HP every tick, and it lasts longer per Demon Fire. It's pretty easy to get it to be like 20 seconds long, or close enough, right? So it's a decent amount of like ticking HP. It's pretty good for soloing, but it's not like a snap thing. Like it's not gonna like It's not gonna save you in a pinch. It's kind of more like sustain type of spell. And then you have Chains of Malice, which is a single target spell that stuns, but also it chains the enemy and you can like drag him around. It looks actually sick. Like I have to say that it looks really really sick. Um, you have a bunch of passives that increase your strength, your stamina, and such. Um, and then one of your main defensive tools here is Black Shield, which is again on the class side. Black Shield is a 2-minute cooldown. You consume your Demon's Blood stacks. We're going to talk about that later. To gain like a big absorb shield, and for when it's maximum capped, it's literally like as big as your entire HP pool. So it's a massive, massive shield. It runs out as often as you actually consume it, even when you're thinking. And then you have Demon Heart, which is generates 6 stacks of Demon Fire. This thing just gives you like a bunch of resource. You can either use it like in PvP if you want to just like burst right off the rip and you don't want to have to build all your resources, or you can use it in PvE. You sync it with your cooldowns and it gives you like this bam 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 type of spending that you can do during your windows of cooldowns. You have access to some more passives. Juggernaut, which is another defensive where it consumes your demon's blood. Again, talk about that in just a second. Reducing all damage you take by 30 seconds, and you start healing every 2.5 seconds increase for every demon blood you consume. The DR of it is really the strong part, but you know that's not bad at all. Here you have Burning Rage. It immunes you to incapacitates, banish, and polymorphs, and you can use it while it is. And you also generate rage every second, so it's a great way to kickstart your rage, either like on start of boss fights or mid pull to just like fuel your rotation even faster. You have Hellbound Charge. If you've played retail, that would be like the Paladin steed. In gameplay, you basically just like quickly you spawn your war steed but it's not the real war steed. It's like just the image. You can use it indoors compared to your normal war steed, but it goes to like 70% for like 3 seconds. It doesn't look crazy, but like there's never been like a raid mechanic where you need more than 70% move speed for 3 seconds. Like you'll just overrun away or back. So 2 charges on that mechanic is pretty cool. It definitely fixed the old issue of cogs being super slow. You have access to other stuff, like you can like casting your war steed instantly, but it now has a cooldown and stuff. Pretty useful for PvP. And in terms of notable capstones, you have one here which is Chain Warden, which reduces the cooldown of your AoE grip. We'll talk about it later. And Chain Whip, which is your interrupts, and also allows your normal hook to pull 2 additional enemies. So definitely like a ton of control in that node. To the left here we got Dread. Periodic damage dealt now grants a stack of Dread. At 10 stacks, your next Infernal Strike transforms into Annihilation, dealing bigger damage as fire and generating 4 Demon Fire. Basically, you get stacks and passively, and then your Infernal Strike, which is your primary spender, deals way more damage and generates way more combo points. Pretty good. Great damage node for itself. And then here we have Xoroth's Sigil. Create a demonic sigil, protects your party members for 20 yards around you, causing the next spell against them to be deflected. On a 1-minute cooldown, it's basically an AoE spell reflect. So that's definitely powerful, very, very good. It's party members, not raid, but even still, like you can do some really nice things with that. I remember we used it to deflect Magmadar Fear entirely for a group in melee with 2 cogs rotating it. So definitely some nice things you can do. So that's like I kind of skimmed over like a bunch of passives, of course, but like like 5% strength isn't super noteworthy to waste time talking about. Demon's Blood. I did say I was going to talk about Demon's Blood. So Demon's Blood is a mechanic where whenever you take direct damage, you gain a stack of Demon's Blood, and the stack of Demon's Blood increases your healing received. There's a chance, it's not 100%. You do have a way with a talent point to whenever you deal physical damage, which even if you're the fire spec, right, just your auto attacks are going to do the job. You can generate your own Demon's Blood, and then you can get some additional synergies by like every Demon's Blood gives you armor, and stuff like that. Definitely for the DPS spec, it's more like to fuel Black Shield, right? Let's just be honest. But for the tank spec, there's a bunch of different little things that we're going to talk about later that can interact with Demon's Blood. Now for the first spec, Hellfire. So what's Hellfire? Hellfire is, as I said before, it's the Battle Warlock, the hybrid spellcaster melee, and this class gears using Red Paladin gear. So plate, strength, SP, spell power. Your main passive is Greater Imp. You summon a big ol' imp. That's my boy right there to the right. We'll call him Imper, little Imper, right? He does a ton of damage at level 25 because, as just like every pet, he just is just overscale. The pet has various abilities. Notably, he has Burst, which is an AOE, so he does have an AOE, and he has Searing Claw, which is like a big single target thing. He does get access to another spell later. I think it's kind of like a pet kick. I don't know if that's still in the game or not. We don't know for sure because we can't see the pet's next skill. But I'm I wouldn't see why it wouldn't be. So it's either or. You get spell crit based on your intellect and such. So you get a conversion to incentivize having some intellect instead of just playing strength. Your level 40 passive is your pestilence stance that you're in also applies to your pet. So whether it's Apocalypse, which is the main one for Hellfire, which is increases fire damage dealt, or it's any of the other ones, you get a little passive where when your pet attacks, and also at the level 50 is whenever you use Hell Scream to unleash it, the imp also unleashes it. So in a way, you can see it as whenever you use unleash, you get like double the power or double the proc. So it's definitely pretty powerful. Pretty centered about your imps. The first spell in the tree is Helmaw. Helmaw is a spender, just like Skulltaker, but it's a big fire dot. To give a comparison, at level 25, Helmaw looks like it's going to do like 250 damage, but remember it goes right to armor and such, while Skulltaker does weapon damage plus 66. From what I've tested, we're looking at like 30% more damage than like Skulltaker. Which is definitely good, and we have some hooks that increases the damage of Helmaw later that I don't have access to right now. You got intellect increase, reduce rage cost for abilities. Seeking Flame. Seeking Flame is a rage. It costs rage and it generates Hellfire, and it's a ranged ability that deals fire damage. It's literally just when that ability is kind of like when it's up, you use that instead of Infernal Strike because it does more damage. But it's also ranged, so you do have access when you're moving around or you're chasing something. You get like an extra button you can press to keep doing damage. So that's pretty interesting. The Pestilence that's unique to Hellfire is Pestilence of Apocalypse. Pestilence of Apocalypse does enemies around you take increased fire damage from you. Note it's from you. It doesn't affect like all fire damage classes. Like you can't just like your sheer existence doesn't buff like Pyros, right? Well. It does because of another ability we'll talk about later, but whatever. You get Burning Blade. Your Skulltaker doesn't cost rage anymore and ignores part of the armor of your target. Here you got some nodes that interact with you, keeping your enemies burning. So that's like another incentivization for you to keep Helmaw on your target. You have access to a bunch of passives that deal with this, like increasing the damage of Helmaw and stuff. You have Doom. So Doom is a minor cooldown on a 30-second. What it does is it transforms your Greater Imp into a Doom Guard, which deals way more damage and his auto attacks deal more damage and such, and all his abilities are empowered. So it's really strong. You want to definitely use that on cooldown. It costs a bit of rage, but it's definitely worth. And then you got your big cooldown, which is Hellfire form, transformed into a demon, increasing your fire damage dealt by 20% and fire crit chance for 15 seconds. Again, if we compare this to a paladin, this is 100% the equivalent of your wings. The demon form is pretty cool. You're just like a big fire dude. It looked pretty cool before. I don't have access to using it again, so I don't know if they changed it, but I doubt they would because the look was really light. Some other hooks that you do have is your Flames of Xoroth. Flames of Xoroth is the fire fan that you can use for AoE. When you use it with Max Demon Fire, it calls kind of like a rain of chaos, rain of fire from Warlock in the area. So you get like a hook to properly use your AoE. This one is one of my favorite. Seeking Flame, which is your rage ability that generates, will spread your helm off from the target that you're casting to 3 enemies within 6 yards. So that means that even in AoE, you'll want to use your dot helm off, and you'll want to spread it using Seeking Flame. So you have a hook to use to do kind of to focus like you have like some primary target hooks to want to keep your main damage rolling on your primary target, and then you can like spread all the damage around instead of just doing indiscriminate AoE. So that's definitely a plus. Um, the rest here is pretty, it's kind of passive. It's proc chances to do stuff. Now, in terms of the capstones, here we have a handful of choices. Into the Maw, basically whenever Helm Maw expires, it explodes and it deals fire damage equal to 50% of the damage dealt over the duration. So think about it as 50% damage of Helm Maw goes into an AoE. But remember, you can cleave your Helm Maw, so if you're in a pack of like 8 mobs, well, during the duration of Helm Maw, you can spread it like 2 or 3 times. You're going to hit every enemy, and then every enemy is going to explode onto all enemies. You have some insane scaling into like it. This is like an almost quadratic scaling. I wouldn't say it's like infinite because the duration of Helm Maw ending up around, what are we looking at here, right? It's like 12 seconds plus 6 seconds, so 18 seconds, and you can use Seeking Flame every 6 seconds. So you can spread it like 3 times or 4 times if you're lucky, right? So like you can spread it like 3 times, so that means like 9 targets extra plus the 1, so it's 10 targets. Well, 10 targets that take the Helm Maw damage and explode, you're getting like 5 times the damage of Helm Maw in AoE going out. Like this is like an insane pure AoE node. But it's not even just pure AoE, because your Helm Maw still does 50% explosion damage to the target that you're targeting. So definitely, anytime you have like a smidge of AoE to do, this is one of my favorite talents that I used to play with. Here we have Hellstorm. It's a 30-second cooldown. Basically, you start like you have a big fire storm around you, and you deal damage every enemy, for every second to every enemy, and your damage is increased for Demon Fire. Your duration, sorry. Damage and duration is the same. But you go like for super long. It does a ton of damage in AoE, but this is one ability that's like 100% AoE. So definitely like viable in Mythic Plus, but I wouldn't like do that in Raid unless you really have trouble on like Majordomo. Not a bad ability. Looks super good too. The VFX for it before were super good looking. Here in the middle we got Ascended Warlock. Basically, whenever you use Skull Taker, which is your single target spender, at 6 stacks of Demon Fire, you reduce the cooldown of Doom, which is your Imp empowering cooldown, by 5 seconds. And while Doom is active, so while you're in your cooldown, your Doom Guard, your Imp, will copy your Skull Taker, so your Skull Taker is going to do like another like 50% extra damage. Very strong. It used to be like BIS single target talent. Tuning will tell, of course, as always, but generally that's looking good again. And then to the right here, we got attack power and spell power scaling of Seeking Flame by 25%. Not bad. Again, it's hard to tell the exact scalings of everything, and this is kind of just like a numbers tuning. If this is going to be the other option, we'll just have to test when we get to 60. But it looks definitely interesting. And then the last one is Knight of Xoroth. Basically, the way this works is every time you cast Infernal Strike, you gain a stack that increases the crit chance of Skull Taker. And every time you use Skull Taker at 6 Demon Fire, you gain Xorothian Rage, which guarantees your Infernal Strike to Critical Strike. This is a good loop where the more you crit, the more you crit type of thing. And in a sense, this probably is really good at the start when we have low gear, because it's gonna like artificially increases the amount of crits that you get by like a lot. But I don't know if that's gonna hold up like super long. I'm fairly confident that even if we end up taking Punisher here because it's so good, I do think that Ascended Warlock is gonna like take over at some point. Mostly because you're gonna have, once you can reach a certain crit threshold, you're gonna have so much rage that you won't struggle to hit every ability all the time. So you're gonna cast, like, you're gonna like snowball into your doom reduction, and you'll have so much doom uptime that this is gonna gain value, right? Not to say this is gonna be bad. Like I think this has really good potential to be really strong, but we'll see what's up. Um, we'll go for the other DPS spec before talking about the tank. So War. So War is the big, meaty, chunky, physical damage part of the spec. So what's the passives? The first one is simple. Increases the weapon damage dealt by Infernal Strike. So as you can guess, War really wants like a big, strong, low, slow, two-handed weapon to deal maximum damage with every swing, especially considering almost every single attack is based on weapon damage. The second node is physical damage dealt has a chance to apply Torn Flesh, causing the target to bleed for like some amount over 9 seconds. This is like just like an enabler. So every damage you do has a chance to proc a bleed, and then you have later on you'll have talents that feed into doing more damage to targets that are bleeding, and also we have effects that whenever you deal periodic damage, which is damage over time, you have a chance to gain Demon Fire, so you can accelerate your combo point generation. After this, you get Hellfire Carver, which critical strikes with Gore and Infernal Strike generate an additional Demon Fire, so you're really incentivized to gear for some crit. You have a chance if you get high enough crit to spend every 2 builders instead of 3, so you have like real potential here. Here you get melee haste rating based by your strength, so you don't have to really gear by haste, like that's kind of going to happen. It's good single target damage for melee swings, but it's also more rage, because the more often you auto attack, the more you're going to get rage, and the more it's going to be consistent, so you'll definitely fuel your rotation even more. You also generate rage every 3 seconds. That's not super relevant, but it does add up a good amount of rage over a fight. And then at the very last, I think it's super cool, Unleash Pestilence now triggers no cooldown on its first used. Unleash Pestilence can only be reset this way every 30 seconds. So your Hell Scream, your Unleash Pestilence here, I don't know why I'm calling it Hell Scream, it's the old name, but basically whenever you use it, it's just not going to go on cooldown. You're going to be able to use it back to back, which is going to feed real soon. There is a talent that increases your strength after using this, so you're going to be able to like extend that buff as long as possible, essentially extending your damage cooldown window. The first ability that War does get is Warbringer, which transforms your Flames of Xoroth into Warbringer. Basically, it transforms your Fan of Flames AoE into a like a big spin smash on the floor that deals like a ton of weapon damage. It's really strong. There's a small cooldown on it, but generally by the time you get max stacks, you're kind of like on cooldown. You just can't really cheese it with like Demon Fire and such. But it's it's pretty good. The second ability is Gore. So Gore, if you guys played retail or like recent retail Arms Warrior, think about Overpower. So it's like a strike that's not your main spender, and it feeds into your Mortal Strike effect, or your Skull Taker in this case. Now we get a note right under it, which is the main part of this. Casting Gore increases the damage of your next Skull Taker by 10%, stacking 3 times. Basically, Gore is another rage spender that generates Demon Fire that competes with Infernal Strike here, and it boosts your next Skull Taker. It also does a ton of damage. So it does good damage. That's pretty important, right? It's also lower rage cost. So it kind of like helps you be GCD locked, deals good damage, generates Demon Fire, and boosts your thing. So it's really a good button to press. It kind of smooths out your rotation too. Like you have less dead spots because it costs less rage. To the side of it, you just got some passive damage buffs. Here we got Flesh Carver, damaging abilities that spend Demon Fire now refresh a charge of Gore. So whenever you do end up using your Warbringer and Skull Taker, your 2 charges of Gore, you're going to recharge one of them. So it really helps you always having something to press. To the left here, we got Casting Sever that removes the cost of your next Infernal Strike. So Sever is your rage generator, right? But now we get an additional loop where it makes Infernal Strike, your big 2 Demon Fire builder, cost no rage. So one of the loops that is going to happen playing War is you're going to end up pressing like Sever Infernal Strike for free, and then you're going to go like Gore, and then you're going to Sever again, and then you're going to Infernal Strike for free. So your rage economy is really helped by this. It really smooths out the rotation. So that's a really cool passive. Your unique Pestilence is Pestilence of War. It increases your critical damage by 10%, so it really incentivizes you to get a lot of crit. And then your Unleash is just like a massive just smash of Shadow Flame damage, and it also absorbs healing done. More PvP focused, but there's some weird cases where some mobs do heal, so this has uses. You're going to stay in it just because it's damage, like your damage Pestilence for yourself, and the Unleash does really good damage. Right under it, you see the Pestilence effect is increased, blah blah blah. Increased crit, Torn Flesh can now stack. And here's what I was talking about earlier. Unleashing a Pestilence now increases your strength by 10% for 10 seconds. Considering you can use your Unleash every 45 seconds, and it lasts 10 seconds, you're going to have 20 seconds out of every 45 seconds where you have your cooldown window, so it's pretty generous. Here in the middle, you have some armor shred. You have either a Sunder effect here, or you can, if somebody else brings a Sunder effect in your raid, you can opt for Meat Saw to ignore some target armor, so you get a native armor pen instead of doing a Sunder. Here you're reducing the cooldown of your Unleashed Pestilence, so the 45-second cooldown goes down to 30 seconds, and you also get that for both charges of the ability, so your 20 second out of 45 seconds now become 20 seconds out of 30 seconds. So you really gain like a massive uptime on that buff, and it's really good damage. You get an effect where casting Sever increases your attack speed. That just feeds into your melee speed. You're gonna end up with like 50% melee haste or like 60% melee haste, so you're gonna attack super fast even with your big two-hander. To the left here we got Hellburn. So basically what it does is you activate it, and your next Infernal Strike deals damage in like a line cone, and it gives you 20% armor pen on the enemy affected by that dot. You get some passive increase. Here you get some extension on the debuff. You can reduce the cooldown of some stuff. You have Decimation here. Decimation, 2-minute cooldown. Your next Skull Taker or Warbringer used within 30 seconds is guaranteed to critically strike for 25% increased damage. It's just like another burst button. You just want to make sure you use it on the right thing. So you want to use it for in AoE for Warbringer and single target for Skull Taker. It's pretty powerful. It's good. It's just a good power for 1 point. Now into the capstones. You got Demonic Blade. Basically, Sever increases the damage and cost of your next 2 gores by 25%. At the end of the duration, or when all stacks are consumed, you cast Meat Saw. I didn't talk about Meat Saw. Meat Saw is your AoE builder. It kind of functions like Infernal Strike, but for AoE. It becomes worth using around like 4 targets or something. So this is definitely kind of like an AoE hook into your normal rotation. I don't know that this has ever been really strong and used, but there's a world in which numerically Gore does so much damage that it's actually good. I wouldn't bet money that you're really gonna play this in like serious in game, but it could have like really good fun in dungeons. Now here we got Gorge, a little bit more of a PvP talent if I'm to be honest. But what it does is Gore. It now heals you for 50% of the damage over 3 seconds and grants a stack of Gorge. So Gore gains 50% leech. Really strong, as you can imagine, to survive, especially in PvP. At 3 stacks of this, your next Sever will consume the stacks to leech an additional 200% of the damage dealt by it from up to 5 enemies. It's basically every 3 gores, your Sever does big fucking extra damage to like a cleave. So that one's pretty good. In addition, Sever now strike an additional time after 1 second, but has a 2-second increased cooldown. What does that mean? So basically, your Sever, which has a 4-second cooldown, it strikes once, generating 20 rage. Now you're gonna have a 6-second cooldown, and it's gonna strike twice. So you're gonna regenerate like 40 rage. Technically, this is like 50% more rage per second out of Sever, right? But it just depends how the rotation is going. So if you do end up having enough rage from auto attacks and stuff to kickstart the rest, well, you can use this and you essentially save globals. So you're going to be able to build more and spend more while pressing Sever less times. I do think that a lot of the power budget of this node is into like the leech aspect, like the survival aspect. I think this is maybe aimed more at PvP or soloing stuff. I don't really know how the Sever damage and stuff will end up because like Sever isn't normally like a big portion of your damage, so it's pretty hard to tell how much this would actually be worth. Um, but I think it's a cool capstone, at least conceptually. Here we got Butcher, damage dealt by Meat Saw, which is your AoE builder. Increases damage dealt by Warbringer and Brimstone Bludgeon, next ability, by 10% for 10 seconds, stacking 2 times. Basically, this is your AoE. This is your AoE amp. Just imagine that you gain 20% damage on your spender in AoE. Is kind of the way this just works out. So this is not bad, especially for Mythic Plus. There's uses for this. Here you got Domination, damage dealt by Torn Flesh has a 10% chance to reset the cooldown of Hellburn. Hellburn here is your ability that does damage into like a cone and helps you bypass armor. And Torn Flesh is your passive dot. So you just start getting chances to reset your Hellburn, which is we can't test, but it used to be off the global cooldown, so it could be really good damage, especially in AoE. It also has a funnel type of component to it, where if you can hit enough targets with your meat saw and stuff, you can start funneling more Infernal Strikes into your main target. So there's definitely potential for this. It kind of depends how much Torn Flesh is really going to proc in practice and how many targets you can hit consistently. I don't think in single target this is enough because Torn Flesh hits every few seconds. You know, even if you have 100% uptime on Torn Flesh, like 10% chance might mean you get like one reset per minute or or something. So it's not like incredible. Not that it's bad, but it just in pure single target it doesn't seem so impressive. But a lot of boss fight have ads and stuff, and if you can kind of like not cheese, but you know, like do like AoE damage to make sure that you get some funnel procs, like this could be interesting. Here you have Brimstone Bludgeon, 25-second cooldown. You just smash the ground, doing like a ton of weapon damage to 5 enemies around you, and it unleashes your active Pestilence. Yes, you unleash your active Pestilence. So it's like 250% weapon damage, which is like not quite double, but close to double of a fully stacked Warbringer, which is already massive. But you also unleash your Pestilence, which is going to be like Pestilence of War. So you do get like a massive AoE hit, and it's so strong it's even strong in single target. This was used in like all situations for like a long time. This is really strong. Here to the right we got Pestilence Unbound, Skulltaker and Melt. Used at 6 Demon Fire. Now unleash your active Pestilence at half of their effectiveness. Every time you use your single target spender at 6 stacks of Demon Fire, you unleash your Pestilence at 50% damage. That is an insane amount of power, and it also does prio damage. So if you're like in Mythic Plus and you add like a boss and some adds, well, you can just go and do full single target damage to the boss to kill the boss as fast as possible, and then it just explodes Pestilence around you the entire time, doing like a ton of AoE at the same time. So that's definitely strong. And then you have Hell Knight. Hell Knight is a 2-minute cooldown for the next 15 seconds. Direct physical damage dealt would grant you a stack of Champion of the Legion. Global cooldown is reduced by 5%. Physical damage is increased by 2%, and crit is increased by 1%. Stacks 5 times. So your global cooldown will go down 25%, and your physical damage is going to go up by 10%, and your crit by 5%. That is also like an insane ability. If you combine this with every other thing that you do, like especially the reduced global cooldown and stuff, like this is super powerful. Like this is probably going to be played. I mean, time will tell. Everything is always subject to just like the numbers being the numbers. But like this is super powerful, and if you like a power, like a cooldown that's like a steroid that increases haste, this is definitely where you want to go to. And last but not least, we got Defiance. So Defiance here, same thing as all to the left. And then your main ability is your blocks have a percentage chance to spawn a Hellfire Imp. It can only occur every 3 seconds. So in like Mass AoE, you're not gonna have like 50 imps. Very sad, very sad. Good times were had for this to have an ICD. The second thing is every Hellfire Imp reduces your physical damage taken. You get some block rating based on strength. You get every Hellfire Imp reduces your magic damage taken. So essentially, at some point, Hellfire Imps just reduces your fly damage taken by 1% per imp. And then the last capstone is critical block, which is your successful block heavy 50% chance to critically block for twice the amount, which is pretty good. Like if you had like 400, 500 block value, you'll block like 1,000. And the chance to trigger is increased by 2% for each demon fire you have active. And I think the base value for this is like 40%, and I have 6 demon fire on me, so it's at like 52%. But you're always close to like 40 to 50% chance to critically block. Which is definitely really, really good, especially in AoE. Like, critically blocking Mythic Plus mobs is just, like, insane DR. This isn't so crazy for, like, Ascended Raid, because you get hit by really big swings. Like, if you're getting hit for, like, 6, 7k, what's 500 extra block gonna do to you? But it's still a good passive in general, right? Your main spell is Shield Gore. Basically, your Infernal Strike transforms into Shield Gore. It's literally like all the same. It's a rage spending, generates 2 demon fire, but it scales with your block value, and it deals fire damage. So you go through armor, and it scales with your defensive stats, and it's single target. Your second ability is called Hellfire Imps. You use that ability, and it spawns a little imp on the side of you for like 15 seconds. The ability has a 10-second cooldown. It generates Demon Fire and it generates Rage. So this is definitely a use on cooldown at all times ability, especially because it gives you your passive DRs from having a ton of imps. The ability right underneath it is you either call 2 more imps with the call Hellfire Imp, which is the one I use. So you spawn 3 imps at a time. So you have permanently 3 imps or more. The choice node is if you feel like the spec has too many buttons and you want like a little bit simpler without it being really bad. What it does is it's a passive. It turns your call imp into a passive, and now you pop an imp out every time you use Shield Gore. So you'll end up having 2 or 3 imps around at all times, but it's just going to be like one at a time, and it's not going to generate Rage and Demon Fire for you. But it does save you like globals. It's easier to play. It's a good like introduction to the spec talent right there. To the right here, you got each Hellfire Imp active now increases your chance to block by 1%, 2% with 2 points. So again, if you have like 4 or 5 imps, it's like 8 or 10% block, which 10% block for 1 point node is really, really strong. Here you got block value increase. To the left, you got like rage cost reduction, damage increases. So here you got one of your main abilities, which is Sac Circle or Sacrificial Circle. Basically, what you do is you explode all of your imps, you sacrifice them, and you heal for 15% of your maximum health and 25% of every imp's maximum HP. In practice, if you have like 4 or 5 imps, this is over 50% of your entire health bar every time. So definitely a strong heal on a 1-minute cooldown. Really worth pressing. Really powerful, and you can kind of, if you want, you can kind of like game it a little bit so that when your imps, like when your call imp is getting back off cooldown, like the next global, and your imps are still out, you can sacrifice the imps in their last few seconds to gain like full value, and then you can resummon imps, so you don't really have like a weak spot of more than a global. So it's really strong. Here you got Soul Furnace. Basically, the amount of you get a shield for 15% of the amount of HP you healed, so it's going to be a shield like 20% of your HP or something, but it's definitely good. Like you were low, you just sacrifice your imp, you're back to like 90% HP, and then you have a shield that's going to like absorb like a good portion of the next swing on you. So it's definitely powerful. Here you got your imps have a chance to do like a little bolt of fire instead of doing melee swings. Here you got Unleash Pestilence, now generates 4 Demon Fire and grants Infernal Bulwark, which increases your block value for 20 or 18 seconds. Basically, this just transforms your Unleash Pestilence into like a defensive that increases your block. So that's definitely good. Here is like Avoidance increases your damage dealt, basically. Blocking an attack has a 5% chance to unleash your active pestilence at half of its effect. Doesn't look crazy, but when you're in Mythic Plus, it unleashes a lot. Like, it's going to unleash every 10 seconds or something. So you really get a lot of power out of this in AoE. I wouldn't recommend it in single target, but in AoE it's really strong. Here you got Demonic Grit, and it really increases the damage of your imps by like 30%. Not the damage, I'm so sorry, the HP of your imps by like 30%. It's basically that scales like Sacrificial Circle and such in a way where it heals you even more. To the bottom here, to the middle here, we got Implosion, which is kind of like a wordplay with Implosion. It's a 40-second cooldown, and it requires your Demon Fire. It explodes your Demon Fire, and it spawns 1 imp per Demon Fire. So you can spawn like a 6 imp on a 40-second cooldown, and they last for a while, and it generates rage. It's a pretty good ability. Here, reduces the cooldown of Implosion by 10 seconds, and its rage cost by 5, so your 40-second cooldown Implosion goes to 30 seconds. Really powerful. A lot of imps over the course of the fight. Here we got Chains of Xoroth. This is an AoE mass chain pull, so super strong. A 1.5 minute cooldown is really low too. That's pretty much the best AoE grip in the game. And you can also place it. This is a drop down spell, so you don't have to like grip everything on top of you like Black Knight. You can just like put it like 8-10 yards away from you, so you kind of like dodge like a melee swing at the same time. So it has good uses. Right underneath it, you get some transforms for your spells, like reduces the rage cost of Shield Guard, increases damage, or changes your Flames of Xoroth AoE into kind of like a different AoE that has a cooldown that's a little bit stronger. To the left here, you get a chance to generate a stack of Demon Fire when you're attacked. So you just generate so much Demon Fire in AoE that you just spam, and it's pretty strong. Here's Perpetual Flame. This is another hook into Demon's Blood. Demon's Blood now has a 15% chance when you generate it to deal 33 fire damage to nearby enemies. It doesn't look like a lot, but over the course of like a Mythic Plus, it ends up being a ton of damage. You just explode in damage by being hit. So it's kind of like an assurance in AoE for threat. Here, Critical Strikes with Shield Guard unleashes Hellfire, dealing fire damage, during an additional Demon Fire. Essentially, you just gain extra Demon Fire for critting, so you have a non-zero reason to have some crit. You have some Suffuse, increases your movement speed and stuff. This is kind of a way to help yourself move. Not that it's super needed. Here we got some bonuses to like Black Shield and stuff. And so we're going to just go talk about the capstones. So capstones. Your Demon's Blood can now stack 5 additional times, so like this is 5% more block, 5% more armor and such. And each stack increases the absorption amount of Black Shield by an extra additional 1%. So you get another like 10. You get like Black Shield basically gets 10% bigger again. Here under it, we have called Hellfire Abyssal. So the ability is a 45-second cooldown. It calls a big Infernal from the sky. It deals a ton of fire damage. Now, the Abyssal stays in combat for 15 seconds and reduces the damage taken by raid members by 5%. And kind of the gimmick of the spell is that it costs like 100 rage, but it costs 15 less rage for each active Hellfire Imp. So the idea would be to spawn it when you have like a ton of imps out and it's like free. Now, the problem with this ability is it used to be stronger. It used to be lasting like 30 seconds and be like 10%. So it used to have like really good defensive benefits. Now, my issue with this ability is like we went from like 50%-ish uptime to having 33% uptime because 15 seconds out of every 45 seconds. But also 5% damage reduction is really not so much. You know what I mean? Like it's 5% DR is like good, but as a capstone, having a low uptime 5% DR doesn't seem to me so strong. It could be played, but like I'm not sure. Like it's pretty underpowered in my opinion. Here you have Curse of Xoroth. So basically, this ability, you curse an enemy, it deals like a massive dot. Massive, like a big dot, right? And the next time you use Shield Gore on that enemy, you get Black Shield. So the way this reads in practice for the tank is you use this and then you spawn Black Shield. So this gives you Black Shield on a 1.5 minute CD. That's what this is. Like, that's what this does for you. This is very, very strong. Like, this is definitely a super powerful defensive cooldown. I would play this 99.99% of the time. Right underneath it, you got a Curse from Hell. Basically, periodic damage dealt has a chance to reduce the cooldown of the Curse ability by 3%, and the chance for this to proc is increased by 2% for each Demon Fire. So, seeing this as 27%, and I have 6 stacks, this means the native percentage is 15%, but you'll always be around like 20-22%. So this is this is going to be like good CDR in AoE. Again, single target doesn't really work, but in AoE, the 1.5 minute cooldown is probably going to go down to like 45-second cooldown or something, which is super, super strong because Black Shield is really powerful. The only problem is this is so useful in raid, just because of the nature of the amount of times you're going to tick. To the right here, you have one of my favorite, which is Fire Retribution. Every time a Hellfire imp dies in any fashion, you reduce the cooldown of Sacrificial Circle and Implosion by 1 second. Essentially, you can read this as for every imp you summon, you reduce the cooldown of Sacrificial Circle and Implosion. Now, you generate 3 imps with the improved version of Call Hellfire Imp every 10 seconds. So, for 30 seconds of cooldown on Implosion, right, you're going to generate 9 imps, so you're going to reduce it by 9 seconds. So your Implosion goes to like a 20-second-ish cooldown. So that's pretty strong. And then you have the imps from Implosion themselves are going to die. So that's 6 imps. So your Implosion becomes like a 15-ish second cooldown, like 15 to 20, just depending where it lines up. So this really, really gives you like a ton more imps. And it also reduces the cooldown of Sacrificial Circle by 2 seconds. Now, this turns Sacrificial Circle into like a 30 to 40 second cooldown, which is super, super strong, especially with the shield that's after this. This is something I would consider like a must play. Like this is fueling the amount of defensive you're gonna have at all times, not just by the access to Sacrificial Circle, but also just by your passive damage reduction. You can see like having more and more imps out how good it could be, right? And then the last one is Legion's Presence. It's a 3-minute cooldown, and it increases the damage done by every ally for 15 seconds by 10%, and it also juices your Hellfire imps by 150%, blah, 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 blah. Never going to be used because it doesn't increase your defensiveness, so it's definitely a problem. It doesn't do too much for you. With the current state of things, I'm fairly certain that you're going to play Curse of Xoroth and Fire Retribution almost at all times, except like extremely niche things. So that's the state of pretty much all the talents that's coming. What I think for the future of Cox, right? So I think War has proven to scale extremely well once you get a little bit higher of gear. So we're talking like Mythic MC, like Ascended ZG, Mythic plus 10 gear. Once you get into like actual endgame, you get enough armor penetration and crit, and you get good enough top end damage on your weapons that the spec just deals absolutely insane damage. It has been part of some of the highest I've seen in the alpha. Again, we don't know really how it's going to scale, but I'm fairly confident that War is going to have a lot of potential. I think in PvP, it's also generally War has been like a powerhouse over time. Like it's never been bad. Even when it was bad, it wasn't like actually bad. You know what I mean? So I think War is going to be pretty good. It's going to scale super well. Hellfire, right now at level 25, the pets is doing so much of the work. We don't really know if that's going to change, if we're going to outscale them, or if they're going to stay that strong. Part of me wishes it stays that strong. The pet specs historically haven't done so well, or at least the pets themselves haven't done so well. But I think it's pretty cool that the pet does so much since it's such a part of your kit. I think Hellfire has my favorite gameplay out of the two DPS specs. Personal preference, of course. Normally it scales pretty well. You get access to like a ton of really good weapons, such as like Finkel's Lava Dredger, and such certain items like that, where again you scale pretty hard and you're capable of like super high damage. I think one thing that's interesting with both DPS specs is that you don't really need to change your talents too much to go from doing like raid to doing Mythic Plus. So you definitely have high Mythic Plus potential in many different ways. And then you have Defiance. So the tank Cox, I think, is kind of problematic. Um, how can I explain? So it's a block tank, which historically has been never super doing well on Koa. It doesn't have a lot of HP modifiers, so you're not going to have like a massive health pool to survive one shots. The block mechanic is pretty unreliable in against physical bosses, so you can just like not block. Like it's kind of like avoidance for other tanks, but except that this is the main thing, but you still don't have like 100% block. So you can just like not block like 2 or 3 swings in a row if you're really unlucky, and then you just take so much damage and you don't have so much HP. Um, like that's still a worry. The sheer damage reduction aspect of it also isn't like so high. So you definitely, for every tank buster, you're gonna need to use an ability to survive. Like you're not gonna survive by chance to the tank busters. So that's also like not. That's also like you kind of need to know what you're doing and you need to plan in advance. I think the strength of the cooldowns is really good though. Like Juggernaut is super strong. Black Shield is completely broken. It's super strong. Curse of Xoroth is another Black Shield. Imp Sack is really strong for the recuperation it gives you. So the spec has potential. I think it's gonna struggle more in like super high end rating than in Mythic Plus, because Mythic Plus natively is better for block a little bit. Um, I don't think the spec's gonna be bad. I'm not seeing it gonna be something that's extremely meta in too many situations. But like 100%, if you want to play Cox to do everything, you're gonna be able to clear everything. Like you're just gonna be able to clear everything, and you really don't have to think about it. Just you might have to go a little bit of extra mile. Like if you're, and again, I could just be wrong, and it's like completely doable. But I think if you play Cogs, just get ready. Like you might need like a health flask. You might need some potions and stuff. Um, which is par for the course. I mean, like I think at the start, especially every tank is gonna need it. Maybe Cox is just gonna need it like a little bit longer. Which again is not, it's not too bad, right? Another thing with Cox is I think it has access to really good utility. So first of all, it has a single target stun. It has a single target melee, like half range kick on a short cooldown. Kicks are far few between. So you having a kick, it makes you one of the like restricted amount of specs that have kicks, which is true for all 3 of your specs. So you're definitely instantly desirable. Another thing is your buffs are really good. You bring stamina, strength, spell power. You're like you have really good buffs. Like there's not a comp that exists that doesn't want spell power, strength, or stamina ever. Especially since you're in it and you can use all 3 of those stats. Cox is also natively pretty tanky. I mean, you're a tank class, so taking stray shots, like you're a plate class, sorry. So taking stray shots doesn't hurt you as much as the other classes that are maybe squishier. You have a little bit more HP than most. You have access to abilities like Juggernaut and Black Shield, even as DPS. So there's some mechanics that just would kill almost everyone that didn't like cheese, like line of sight and stuff, where you can just kind of like use Black Shield and survive them. So that's definitely the ball is in your camp. You also have access to some other stuff, like you get like a summon later and stuff, so you can kind of maybe some people are going to take you just if you're ready to make like the run and summon them at the dungeon and stuff. So there's definitely like a bunch of good uses, and just always remember too, you get like your grip and stuff. So between like your kick and your grip, you're one of the best for like specs or class to bring to dungeons, because you can kind of like completely take care of caster control inside of the instance, but you can just like bring every caster in melee and stuff. You can really help your tanks that maybe some tanks don't have kicks, don't really have grips and such. So you can definitely like make some pulls so much easier just by existing. All in all, I think Cox is like a super solid class. It looks to be really good at the end game. It's doing pretty well at the 25 phase. I wouldn't be worried about anything. If you pick this class, like, you're definitely in for a good time, and I think you won't regret it if the fantasy hits you. I think the gameplay is also pretty solid. You have a good amount of skill expression rotationally and with all your utility, so there's definitely room there to have fun and improve. And if you guys are a little bit like me, I like feeling that I'm doing stuff right and I'm doing stuff better. So that's definitely a massive plus for me. The solo ability, Defiance is pretty good at soloing stuff. I would say even the DPS specs are not, like, they're pretty good. They're pretty up there to solo shit. I would say there is like a limit to your self-healing, so there is some stuff that maybe some other tanks that are purely aimed at self-healing could do that you can't. But I would say if you're paired with any like other people, you're definitely not needing like significantly more healing than anybody else. I wouldn't be worried about that at all, and you won't feel like you're unable to do some elites and stuff by your own. You'll definitely be able to do it. So yeah, that was kind of like my deep dive of Cox. I didn't go too much into like specific rotational stuff. I think this class is not too complicated off the rip, so you guys are able to experiment. And I think, again, Cox is a great class. If you like it, if you have any questions about it, feel free to hit a comment or something. And I'll see you guys next time. Have a good day.